The first breath I drew each morning was not of crisp, awakening air, but a lingering scent of forgotten dreams, a phantom perfume that clung to my skin, a constant reminder of where my truest self resided. Here, in the waking world, I was Prince Alaric of Arindril, a name that echoed with the clang of steel and the weight of a crown. They called me the Lion of the Eternal Night, for I commanded armies beneath skies forever cloaked in twilight, and my resolve was said to be as unyielding as the granite of our fortress walls. They praised my valor, admired my wisdom, and whispered the day I would ascend the obsidian throne. Yet, with every accolade, a colder, deeper silence settled within my heart. My kingdom, Arindril, was a land born of shadow and mist, trapped in eternal night since a forgotten cataclysm centuries ago. The sun was a myth, a bedtime story told to children who would never see its light. Instead, our days were marked by the dance of the two moons, Lenara, the pale observer, and Umbra, the veiled hunter, and the insidious way the dreamscape bled into reality. Sometimes, a shimmering river of starlight would appear in the city square, only to dissipate like mist at dawn. Sometimes, whispers of long-dead kin would drift through the castle halls, chilling our blood. It was a beautiful, terrifying existence, with a veil between what was real and what was imagined was as thin as a spider silk. But the real curse, the one that truly gripped my soul, was not the eternal night. It was a hollow space within me, a vast, echoing cavern that no amount of praise or duty could fill. Noble women, beautiful and clever, paraded before me like jeweled birds, their eyes promising devotion, their smiles seeking favor. Lady Lyra, with her raven hair and fiery spirit, once recited an epic poem in my honor, her gaze fixed solely on me. Lady Seraphina, gentle as dawn, offered me a hand embroidered with our house sigil. I saw their worth, acknowledged their beauty, but felt nothing. A polite nod, a customary smile, a heart utterly unmoved. It was a quiet torment, this inability to feel, to connect, to love. I was a warrior, a leader, a prince. Yet, in the most fundamental human way, I was broken. Then came the night, not the perpetual night of Arindril, but the night my dreams became more vivid than my waking life. It began subtly, with fragment of melody I couldn't place, a scent of night-blooming jasmine that wasn't in my chamber. Soon, the fragments coalesced into a face, then a form, then an entire world. I found myself standing in a meadow bathed in silver light, unlike any place in my sunless realm. Before me stood Selene. Her name whispered itself into my mind the moment I saw her. She was a woman woven from moonlight and starlight, her hair the color of midnight streaked with silver, her eyes pools of an impossible, gentle warmth. When she spoke, her voice was a melody that resonated deep within the hollow of my chest, filling it, warming it. We talked for hours, or perhaps moments. Time had no meaning there. She understood my burdens, my silence, the weight of the crown. She saw past the Lion of Arindril to the man who yearned for a quiet heart. She saw me. "Why do you carry such sorrow, my prince?" she asked one dream night, her fingers tracing the worry line on my brow. Her touch, though ethereal, felt more real, more alive than any touch in my waking life. Because I am meant to rule, protect, to live for my people, I confessed the words of dam breaking. But I cannot love. I cannot feel the way others do. My heart is a stone, Selene. She smiled a sorrowful, understanding smile. Perhaps it is not a stone, Alaric. Perhaps it is merely sleeping, waiting for the right song to awaken it. Her words were a balm, a promise. In her presence, the curse of my empty heart lifted. With Selene, I laughed. With Selene, I felt a longing so profound it ached. With Selene, I was whole. Each dawn, the return to Arindril was a cruel awakening. The vibrant hues of the dreamscape would fade, replaced by the somber grays and deep blues of my kingdom. The warmth of Selene's touch would vanish, leaving me with a phantom chill of eternal night. The laughter would die on my lips, replaced by the familiar ache of emptiness. I would rise, don my armor, attend councils, lead patrols, perform my princely duties with unwavering discipline. But my true self, my living heart, waited only for sleep. One frigid morning, after a dream of unprecedented clarity where Selene, and I walked through an ancient moss-laden ruin that felt achingly familiar. I found myself clutching the hilt of my sword, its cold steel grounding me. My chamber felt smaller, colder. The faces of my advisors, my guards, even my own reflection, the polished armor, seemed blurred, distant. They are not real, a voice whispered in the back of my mind. Only Selene is real. A chill wind snaked through my chamber window, carrying with it a faint, sweet scent, jasmine. My breath hitched. Jasmine, the scent of Selene. My gaze fell upon the ancient tapestry adorning my wall, depicting a forgotten era of Arindril. Amidst the mythical beasts and legendary heroes, my eyes snagged on a small detail in the corner. A ruin, half obscured by overgrown vines. It was the ruin from my dream. The very place Selene and I had walked last night. My heart, that supposedly barren wasteland, lurched. A cold dread, far more potent than any battlefield fear, began to coil in my stomach. What if Selene wasn't just a dream? What if she was real? And what if my yearning for her was not just a solace, but a tether, pulling me into a truth far more dangerous than any nightmare? Chapter 1. Echoes in the Stone. The scent of jasmine, faint but undeniable, clung to my consciousness as I stared at the tapestry, the depicted ruin mocking me with its silent familiarity. My heart hammered against my ribs, a chaotic drumbeat in the stillness of my chamber. For years, I had accepted my dreams as a necessary escape, a beautiful illusion. Now, that illusion felt like a fragile veil, ready to tear. If the dreamscape could mirror reality in such detail, then what else was real? Was Selene merely a figment of my longing, or something far more tangible, a soul reaching across an impossible divide? I dismissed my squire, Arian, with a terse wave, the usual morning greetings forgotten. My hands, calloused from sword practice, trembled slightly as I pulled back the heavy tapestry, revealing the cold stone wall beneath. No hidden passages, no ancient inscriptions, just a solid, unyielding rock of the castle. But the image was seared into my mind. I needed answers, and the only path I knew lay in the vast, shadowed archives of Arindril, a place I rarely frequented, preferring clarity of blade over dusty scrolls. The journey through the castle felt different. Every shadow seemed to deepen. Every flicker of torchlight seemed to cast longer, more ominous specters. The hushed whispers of courtiers, usually background noise, now seemed laden with secrets. Do they know? I wondered, a surge of paranoia I'd never experienced before. Do they sense the fracturing of my reality? The royal archives were a labyrinth of towering shelves, overflowing with scrolls, codices, and maps, centuries of Arindril's history preserved in the eternal night. The air was thick with the scent of aged parchment and dust, a stark contrast to the ethereal jasmine. The arch-librarian, a wizened old gnome named Master Lara, peered at me over spectacles perched on her long nose, her eyes keen despite her age. She was known for her photographic memory and her guarded nature. "Your Highness," she rasped, a slight bow. "A rare honor. What brings the Lion of Arindril to our humble den of knowledge?" "I seek information on ancient ruins," I stated, trying to keep my voice even. "Specifically, a particular structure, moss-laden, with a distinctive arched entrance, deep in the Eldoria wilds." Alara's expression tightened imperceptibly. "The Eldoria wilds are vast, Your Highness. Many ruins lie forgotten there. Could you perhaps be more precise?" I pulled a piece of charcoal and a small parchment from my satchel, quickly sketching the outline of the ruin from my dream, focusing on the unique curvature of the archway and a faint, triangular symbol I remembered carved into its keystone. As I drew, the image in my mind became sharper, almost holographic. It was as if Selene herself was guiding my hand. Alara's eyes widened fractionally as she studied the sketch. This is unusual." She shuffled through a stack of old maps, her fingers surprisingly nimble. "This symbol, it matches an almost forgotten dialect. An ancient ward, actually, a binding symbol. It's often found on places of powerful confinement. Confinement. The word echoed in my mind, sending a fresh wave of dread through me. Selene's whispered pleas. Is she no figment, but a real soul imprisoned within the dream realm? My own question, now hauntingly prophetic. Master Alara finally pulled out a brittle, leather-bound tome, its cover worn smooth by centuries of handling. This is the Chronicle of Forgotten Eldoria, written by the first arch-scholar, Lyra of the Whispering Woods, nearly 7 centuries ago. It speaks of a temple of whispers deep within the ancient Eldoria wilds, near the sunken fens. The description matches your sketch precisely, including the binding symbol. She flipped to a yellow page, her finger tracing a faded drawing. It was unmistakably the ruin from my dream. What more does it say about this temple of whispers? I urged, leaning closer, my breath catching my throat. It was not a temple of worship, Your Highness, Alara said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, but a place of ritual, of a time when the veil between worlds was even thinner than it is now. It speaks of a powerful sorceress, a keeper of the dream roads, who made a dark bargain to fuel the dreamscape's magic with mortal souls. My blood ran cold. Mortal souls. Selene's whisper please. The pieces, terrifying and fragmented, were beginning to slot together. Does it mention specific individuals? Any names? Alara hesitated, her gaze flicking nervously towards the shadowed corners of the archive. There's one, a princess, Selene of the Azure Coast, betrothed to a prince of the sunlit lands, centuries before the eternal night fell. Her disappearance was a great tragedy. The Chronicles suggest she was offered a sacrifice. The name hit me like a physical blow. Selene, my Selene, a princess, sacrificed to fuel the dreamscape, the emptiness in my heart, the reason I could only find solace in dreams. It wasn't a flaw within me. It was part of a curse, a trap laid centuries ago. My dream lover was a captive. A storm raged within me. Fury at the injustice, despair for Selene, and a fierce, burning resolve. I had to free her. But how? And what would be the cost of tearing at a magical prison woven into the very fabric of our reality? As I stood there, reeling from the revelations, a sudden, guttural roar echoed from somewhere deep within the castle walls. It was unlike any sound I had ever heard, more animal than human, yet imbued with a raw, agonizing sorrow. The ancient scrolls on the shelves vibrated. Master Alara gasped, clutching her chest. "By the moons," she whispered, her face pale. What was that? Before she could finish, the very air in the archives grew heavy, suffocating. The magical lanterns flickered wildly, threatening to extinguish. And then, from the depths of the shadows, a spectral form began to coalesce. It was a monstrous, shadowy beast vaguely lupin, its eyes burning with malevolent green fire. It rose, towering over us, its fangs dripping with ethereal ichor, and fixed its gaze directly on me. It was not a dream. It was here, in the waking world, and it was coming for me. "Get behind me, Master Alara," I roared, drawing my sword, Nightbane, its polished steel gleaming faintly in the oppressive darkness. My hand found its familiar comfort, but my heart was a tangled knot of terror and a strange, fierce exhilaration. The curse was real. Selene was real. And now the nightmare was real too. The eternal night had finally bled into a waking horror, and I, Alaric, Prince of Arindril, was caught between saving my dream and defending my reality. The monstrous shadow lunged. My sword met the lunging shadow with a soundless shriek of displaced air. There was no clang of steel on bone, no satisfying resistance of flesh. Nightbane passed the creature as if it were smoke, the silver light of the dreamscape I'd once clung to now a terrifying, tangible enemy. But the cold that radiated from its form was real. It was a grave chill, a deep, necrotizing cold that seeped into my blade up my arm and settled like a shard of ice in my chest. The beast was here in my world, and my most trusted weapon, the blade that had slain countless foes, was utterly useless. "Your Highness, its eyes!" Master Alara shrieked from behind a toppled shelf of scrolls. "It draws power from the shadows." I threw myself to the side as spectral claws, far more solid than the rest of its body, gouged deep furrows into the ancient flagstones where I had just stood. The stone splintered and cracked under the force. This was no dream. The danger was immediate, the threat of death absolute. The beast reformed its smoky body, its burning green eyes fixated on me with intelligent, seething hatred. Then the whispers began, not in the room, but inside my own head. "She weeps for you, little prince." A voice slithered through my thoughts, cold and venomous. "She feels your every waking moment of emptiness. Your hollow heart is her eternal prison." An image flashed behind my eyes, so vivid it buckled my knees. Selene, not in our sun-drenched meadow, but in a lightless cell, her silver-streaked hair matted with grime, her beautiful face etched with despair. Chains, forged a solidified nightmare, bound her to a stone wall. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine across the impossible distance, and whispered a single, heart-shattering word: "Alaric." "No!" I roared, a sound of pure agony, and swung my sword again, this time with a wild, desperate fury. It was a foolish move. The beast dissolved around the blade and coalesced behind me, its claws raking across my back. The pain was excruciating, a searing fire that ripped through my leather tunic and bit deep into my flesh. I stumbled forward, gasping, the coppery tang of my own blood flooding my senses. This was its strategy, to break my mind with visions of Selene suffering while it tore my body apart. The heavy oak doors of the archive burst open, and Captain Valerius of the Obsidian Guard stormed in, his face a mask of grim determination, flanked by two of his best soldiers. Valerius, a man whose loyalty was forged in the same fires that had forged my crown, took in the scene in a heartbeat, his prince bleeding, a gnome cowering, and a monster from the deepest pits of nightmare dominating the room. "Form a perimeter. Protect the prince," he bellowed, his voice the unwavering command of a seasoned warrior. His men raised their silver-inlaid pikes, their courage a beacon in the oppressive dark. But their bravery was for naught, like my sword. Their weapons passed harmlessly through the shadow's form. The beast seemed to laugh, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated in our bones, and swatted one of the guards aside with a casual flick of its spectral claws. The man flew across the room and crumpled against a shelf, motionless. Panic began to fray the edges of my resolve. We were fighting a concept, a living nightmare given form. How do you kill a shadow? How do you fight a dream? The dreamscape. The thought was a flicker of light in the storm of my mind. The beast came from there. It was fueled by its energy, the very same energy that bound me to Selene. You must tap into the one thing that connects you to that realm, a memory of Selene's voice from a long-forgotten dream, whispered in my soul. "Our bond, Alaric. It is your only weapon." It was madness, a desperate gamble born of a dying hope. I ignored the searing pain in my back, ignored Valerius's frantic shouts. I closed my eyes. The world of stone and fear and screaming men fell away. I pushed past the vision of Selene in chains, seeking the memory of her in the silver meadow. I focused on the warmth of her hand in mine, the sound of her laughter, the way her eyes held a universe of understanding. I poured every ounce of my yearning, my forbidden love, my desperate hope for her freedom into a single point of focus. I called her name in the sanctuary of my mind. Selene. A warmth spread from my chest, down my arm, and into the hilt of Nightbane. I opened my eyes. The sword was glowing, not with the reflected torchlight, but with an internal, ethereal silver luminescence, the very light of my dreams. The whispers in my head recoiled, hissing in anger. The beast took a hesitant step back, its green eyes widening in what looked like fear. "Your Highness, your sword." Valerius breathed, his voice filled with awe. I didn't answer. I surged forward, the pain in my back a distant echo. This time, when I swung Nightbane, it did not pass through shadow. The silver-lit blade met the creature's smoky flesh with a deafening sizzle, like water on a forge. A piercing, soul-rending shriek tore through the archive as ethereal ichor sprayed from the wound, dissipating before it hit the ground. It could be hurt. It could be killed. The fight became a deadly dance. The beast was faster, enraged, its claws striking with lethal precision. But now I had a weapon. I parried a blow that would have decapitated me, silver light clashing against solidified darkness. I spun, my blade carving a glowing arc through the air, severing one of its spectral limbs. The whispers intensified, screaming now, promising me an eternity of watching Selene suffer. I gritted my teeth, holding onto her memory like a shield, her love my anchor in the maelstrom. With a final, desperate roar, the beast lunged, its mauled fangs gaping wide. I saw my opening. Dropping to one knee, I thrust Nightbane upward with all my strength, aiming for the swirling vortex of emerald energy in its chest that I knew, instinctively, was at heart. The silver blade plunged deep into the core of the shadow. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then the beast imploded, not in a shower of gore, but in a violent, silent vortex of screaming shadows and tormented whispers that were sucked back into the point of my sword. The oppressive cold vanished. The magical lantern steadied, and the heavy air of the archive cleared, leaving only the scent of dust, old parchment, and my own blood. In the sudden, deafening quiet, a single object fell from the space the beast had occupied, clattering on the stone floor with a sharp, metallic sound. It was a small, black and iron token, no bigger than my thumb. Shaking, I knelt and picked it up. It was still cold with the creature's unnatural energy. Etched into its surface was a sigil, a thorny vine coiled around a weeping eye. My blood turned to ice. My breath hitched in my throat, and the world tilted on its axis. I knew that symbol. Years ago, during the campaign in the Weeping Fens, my platoon had stumbled upon a hidden lair. A sorceress, wild and ragged, had stood before us, her power radiating in palpable waves. She had begged me to spare her sanctum, claiming it held the balance of a fragile ecosystem. My advisors had urged me to purge the place, to destroy the cursed ground she occupied. But I, in my youthful arrogance and a misguided sense of chivalry, had seen not a threat, but a desperate woman protecting her home. I had ordered my men to leave her and her blighted lands in peace. The sigil on the token was hers. The hollowness of my heart, Selene's imprisonment, the shadow beast sent to kill me. It wasn't a centuries-old tragedy. It wasn't random chance. It was vengeance, a specific, targeted, and brutal vengeance. And the sorceress I had spared out of mercy was the one who had cursed me to an eternity of it. My act of compassion had been my damnation. Chapter 3. The Price of Mercy. The iron token in my palm felt heavier than a mountain, its coldness a brand of my failure. Around me, the chaos of the archive settled into a stunned, disbelieving silence, punctuated only by the shallow breathing of Captain Valerius and the pained groans of the injured guard. Master Alera was murmuring what sounded like a prayer of protection, her eyes wide with terror. But I heard none of it. The only sound in my world was the echo of my own folly, a chorus of misjudgment and naive compassion that doomed the only woman I had ever loved. Guilt, sharp and venomous, coiled in my gut. Every praise I had ever received for my wisdom, every ballad sung of my valor, now felt like a bitter mockery. I, Alaric, the Lion of Arindril, had personally forged the chains that bound Selene. I had handed the sorceress the very knife she now twisted in my heart. My mercy had been the seed of this poison, and for years I had been blissfully, ignorantly watering it with my own secret longing. Your Highness, Valerius said, his voice cutting to the haze of my self-recrimination. He knelt, his gaze fixed on the wounds on my back, but I knew his real question lay in the token I clutched. What was that thing? And what is this? I closed my fists around the sigil, the sharp edges digging into my skin. The truth was a dangerous, volatile thing, a secret so personal it felt like bearing my own soul for dissection. Revealing Selene, admitting my heart was bound to a dream, confessing that a past act of clemency had just resulted in an attack within the castle's sacred walls. It would be seen as a catastrophic failure of judgment. It would shatter the image of the unshakable prince my kingdom relied upon. It was a creature of the bleed. I lied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. An old horror, drawn from the dreamscape by the thinning veil. This, I held up the token for a brief second before pocketing it, is merely a remnant of its power, an arcane focus. Valerius nodded, though a flicker of doubt crossed his features. He was too loyal to question me openly, but too sharp to accept such a simple explanation. The Royal Council must be convened at once. Your Highness, an attack of this nature, inside the archives, it is an unprecedented breach. He was right. The walk to the council chamber was a torment. Every step was heavy with the weight of my deceit. The faces of the guard we passed, etched with concern for my well-being, only twisted the knife of my guilt deeper. I was their protector, yet I was the source of the rot that had just invaded their home. The council chamber was a cavern of obsidian and silver, dominated by a massive, polished stone table that reflected the grim faces of Arindril's most powerful figures. At its head sat my father, King Theron, his face, usually a bastion of strength, now drawn and pale beneath the eternal twilight. Beside him, Lord Kalen, the grizzled, hawkish general of my armies, drummed his fingers on the table, his one good, irradiating impatience and fury. Valerius gave his report, his voice echoing in the tense silence. He recounted the beast's appearance, its ethereal nature, its malevolent intelligence, and my eventual, hard-won victory. He wisely omitted the detail of my glowing sword, attributing my success to a well-placed strike against his arcane core. A creature of the bleed does not simply manifest and attack the heir to the throne, Alaric, Kalen growled, his gaze pinning me to my seat. This was a targeted assault. The Weeping Fens have long been a source of dark energy. It is home to witches, heretics, and forgotten powers. I warned you years ago that your sentimentality in that campaign would have consequences. His words, meant as a political barb, struck their intended target with the force of a battering ram. He had no idea how right he was. I felt my father's tired eyes on me, seeking answers I could not give. "What would you have me do, Lord Kalen?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "What we should have done a decade ago." He slammed his fist on the table, making the goblets jump. "Take a legion into the fens. Burn out whatever nest this creature crawled from. Salt the earth. Show them what happens when the shadows of Arindril dare to strike at its heart." A chorus of assent rumbled through the more militant members of the council. They saw a simple solution, fire and steel. But I saw a trap. To march an army into the domain of a sorceress who could conjure nightmares into reality, a sorceress who held Selene's very soul in her grasp, would be suicide. It was precisely what she wanted, to lure her enemy onto her own cursed ground. To refuse, however, would be to display weakness, to validate Kalen's accusations of sentimentality and indecisiveness. I was caught in a political snare of my own making. "No," I said, the word cutting to the chamber's heated atmosphere. "A full-scale assault is rash. We do not know the extent of the enemy's power or their numbers. We will send scouts, fortify our patrols. We will act from a position of knowledge, not blind vengeance." Kalen scoffed. "Knowledge? Or fear, Prince Alaric?" The accusation hung in the air, thick and poisonous. I met his glare, my own face a mask of cold resolve, but inside I was fracturing. I was a liar, a fool, and a coward, hiding the truth to protect my own reputation, while the woman I loved suffered from my mistakes. The council meeting dragged on, a blur of strategic debates and political posturing. Every word another turn of the screw in my personal torture. Hours later, I stumbled back to my chambers, the weight of the crown, the kingdom, and my own catastrophic failure pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. I needed to see her. I needed to escape the waking nightmare of my life and find the only solace I had ever known. I needed to tell Selene that I knew, that I was sorry, that I would find a way to free her, no matter the cost. I fell onto my bed, exhaustion pulling at me like a physical chain. I closed my eyes, forcing my mind towards a familiar path into the dreamscape, yearning for the silver meadow and Selene's comforting presence. Sleep took me quickly, a desperate, plunging fall into darkness. But when I opened my dream eyes, the meadow was gone. I stood in a wasteland of twisted, black thorns that clawed at a bruised, purple sky. The air, once filled with the scent of jasmine, was now acrid with the smell of decay and regret. In the center of this desolate realm, where our favorite willow tree once stood, was a cage, a cruel, gnarled cage woven from the same living thorns that choked the land. And inside it was Selene. She was pale, her form flickering and translucent, as if she were fading. Her silver-streaked hair was limp, her warm eyes now wide with desolate fear. She reached a trembling hand through the bars, her lips forming my name without a sound. I ran towards her, my heart shattering, but a wall of thorns erupted from the ground, blocking my path. I see the lion has finally found his way to my garden. A voice echoed to the wasteland, dripping with ancient power and cold, satisfying fury. From the shadows behind the cage, a figure emerged. It was a sorceress from the weeping fens, no longer ragged but clad in robes of woven shadow, her face a mask of triumphant vengeance. The sigil of the thorny vine, and the weeping eye glowed faintly on her brow. You seek to free her? Morwenna, the sorceress hissed, a cruel smile twisting her lips. You do not understand the nature of your curse, little prince. It is your love that built this cage, your yearning that nourishes these thorns. She raised a hand, and as I watched in horror, a tender of my own desperate longing flowed from me like a silver thread, connecting the cage and causing the thorns around Selene to tighten, drawing a pained gasp from her fading form. Morwenna's smile widened. Every night you seek her, you'll only feed her prison. Your hope is a lock. Your devotion is a key that turns it, sealing her away forever. Stay away, Alaric, or your very presence will be the thing that snuffs her out completely. Chapter 4. The Poison of Hope. The world dissolved into a cacophony of silent screams. Mine, Selene's, the tormented echoes of the dreamscape itself. Morwenna's words were a poison that bypassed the mind and went straight for the soul. Your devotion is the key that turns the lock. I watched, paralyzed with a horror beyond any battlefield dread, as my own love, a force I believed to be pure and sacred, became a tangible instrument of torture. The silver thread of my longing tightened around Selene's cage, and the thorns pulsed with malevolent, sickly light, digging deeper into her ethereal form. A pained whimper escaped her lips, a sound that fractured the last remnants of my composure. Stop this. I roared, my voice raw with desperation. I tried to sever the connection, to retract the very love that was strangling her, but it was like trying to command my own heart to cease beating. It was an intrinsic part of me, uncontrollable and absolute. Morwenna laughed, a sound like grinding stones. How can you stop what you are, little prince? Your hollow heart was a blank page, and I have written my vengeance upon it. You will either abandon her to fade alone in the silence of your absence, or you will love her to death with the noise of your presence. Both paths lead to my victory. She reveled in my agony, her eyes feasting on my despair. I looked past the sorceress to Selene, my heart a bleeding wound in my chest. Her eyes, filled with tears that did not fall, held a desperate plea. Go, she mouthed, the word a silent, selfless command. Leave me. She was willing to endure an eternity of fading solitude to save herself from the pain my love was now causing her. The choice was impossible, a swift, agonizing death at my hands, or a slow, lonely one without me. With a gut-wrenching scream of pure rage and grief, I tore myself from the dream. I woke with a violent gasp, my body drenched in a cold sweat, the sheets of my bed tangled around me like a shroud. The familiar twilight of my chamber felt alien and threatening. My own mind, once my only sanctuary, was now a hostile territory, a minefield where every thought of Selene was a weapon aimed at her heart. Sleep was no longer a refuge. It was a torture chamber of my own design. And so I chose not to sleep. The first day was a trial of will. I plunged myself into the most grueling duties I could find. I spent 8 hours in the training yard, my sword a blur of motion, driving myself and my sparring partners to the brink of collapse. I pored over military strategies until my eyes burned, attended every tedious council session, and walked the castle battlements until the eternal night seemed to seep into my very bones. Anything to keep my mind occupied, anything to keep exhaustion at bay. By the second day, the fatigue was a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders, slowing my thoughts. The edges of my vision began to blur. The whispers of courtiers seemed to warp and twist into Morwenna's mocking laughter. I saw shadows move in my peripheral vision, coalescing into thorny vines before dissolving when I turned to look. I snapped at my squire, Arian, for a minor mistake, and saw the fear in his eyes. Captain Valerius approached me, his face a mask of concern. Your Highness, you look unwell. You must rest. I am fine, Captain. I bit out, my voice harsher than I intended. There is much to be done. A kingdom does not rest. I pushed past him, the isolation a cold cloak around me. I couldn't confide in him. I couldn't confide in anyone. How could I explain that I was being hunted by my own love? That my only defense was to run from myself? The third day was a descent into waking nightmare. Reality began to fray. The great obsidian walls of the council chamber seemed to breathe. The faces of my father's advisors melted and reformed like wax figures held too close to a flame. During a tense debate with Lord Kalen over patrols in the fens, I found myself staring at the thorny sigil that was not there, branded on his forehead. I lost my train of thought, stammering an incoherent response that drew looks of pity and alarm from the council. The rumors began to fly. The prince was cracking under pressure, his mind touched by the shadow beast's influence. I saw the calculating look in Kalen's eye. My weakness was his opportunity. I was losing, not just the battle against Morwenna, but the battle for my own sanity, for the respect of my people. The hollow in my heart, once a quiet ache, was now a screaming abyss, amplified by sleeplessness and the gnawing terror of what was happening to Selene in my absence. Was she fading? Was she alone in that thorny hell? Believing I had abandoned her? The thought was a greater torture than any physical exhaustion. On the fourth night, my body betrayed me. While reviewing sentry reports of my study, the world simply dissolved. I slumped forward, my head hitting the oaken desk with a dull thud, and was plunged into the abyss of unconsciousness. I braced myself for the thorny wasteland, for the sight of Selene's cage. But I was somewhere else entirely. I stood in a vast, echoing cavern, the air cold and stagnant. The darkness was absolute, but it was not empty. It was filled with faint, sorrowful whispers, the disembodied thoughts and fragmented memories of 1,000 other souls trapped within the dreamscape's machinery. It was a place of storage, a reservoir of stolen lives. I was in the foundations of Morwenna's power. A faint, silvery light pulsed in the distance, a single, brave heartbeat in the oppressive gloom. It was familiar. It was her. Driven by an instinct that defied all logic, I stumbled towards it, my boots echoing in profound silence. The light led me to a small alcove where a fractured, ethereal projection of Selene flickered like a dying candle. This was not the tortured captive in the cage, but a sliver of her pure consciousness, a ghost of a ghost, hidden away in the deep archives of a dream. She was almost transparent, her form wavering, but her eyes, when they met mine, were filled with a desperate, urgent clarity. "Alaric!" she whispered, her voice a faint echo, yet clearer than anything I had ever heard. "You are here. I knew you would not abandon me." "Selene, I can't come back. My love, it strengthens the prison." I choked out, the words tasting like poison. Her spectral image flickered, a look of profound sorrow on her face. She twisted the truth. She feeds on despair, Alaric, but she fears hope. She fears love that is not just a feeling, but an action. Her voice grew stronger, more urgent. My prison is tied to a source, an anchor in the waking world. She lied. Your love isn't the lock that seals the cage. She reached out, her ghostly fingers brushing my cheek. The touch sent a jolt of warmth and courage through my weary soul. It's the key that will shatter it. She is terrified of you realizing it. Find the sunken temple in the weeping fens. Find the artifact she used to bind me, the Heartstone. You have to break the source, Alaric. Destroy the Heartstone. Her form began to dissolve, the whispers of the cavern growing louder, threatening to overwhelm her. "Selene, no. Stay with me. Destroy the Heartstone." Her voice faded into a final desperate whisper, "And you destroy the curse." And then she was gone. I was left alone in the echoing darkness, my heart hammering against my ribs, not with despair, but with a terrifying, dangerous, and incandescent sliver of hope. Morwenna had lied. My love was not the poison. It was the antidote, and she had just told me exactly where to find the cure. Chapter 5. The Road of Thorns. I woke with a gasp, not on the cold floor of my study, but in my own bed. The pale, bruised light of eternal twilight filtered through the window, and for the first time in days, the world was not a blurry, threatening landscape. It was sharp, terribly, exquisitely sharp. The fog of exhaustion and despair had been burned away, leaving behind the cold, hard clarity of singular purpose. Hope was not a gentle warmth, as the poets claimed. It was a shard of glass in my gut, a promise of pain and a demand for action. Selene was real. The curse could be broken. And I, who had been its cause, would now be its end. I rose from the bed, my movements fluid and precise. The haggard, broken man of the past few days was gone, replaced by the prince they called the lion. But this lion was different. Not just a symbol of strength for a kingdom, but a predator with a singular target in its sights. I found Captain Valerius outside my door, his hand raised a knock, his face a portrait of weary concern. The concern vanished, replaced by surprise, as he saw me. "Your Highness," he began, "you are ready." I finished for him, my voice devoid of its former strain. "Summon the Royal Council. An emergency session. Now!" I strode into the council chamber not 20 minutes later, ignoring the shocked whispers and stunned looks from the assembled lords. I was washed, armored, and carrying Nightbane at my side. The exhaustion was still a deep ache in my bones, but it was banked like coals beneath a raging fire. I did not take my seat. I stood at the head of the obsidian table, my shadow falling long across its polished surface. "Lord Kalen," I began, my voice ringing with an authority that silenced the room. "You were right. A passive defense is not enough. The threat from the Weeping Fens is targeted, and it requires a direct response." Kalen's one good I lit up with grim satisfaction. "Finally, I will have a legion ready to march by nightfall." "You will do no such thing." I cut him off. The satisfaction on his face curdled into confusion. An army would be marching into a slaughterhouse. This is not a war of steel, but of shadow and sorcery. A scalpel is required, not a bludgeon. I will lead a small infiltration team into the fens myself. We leave within the hour. The chamber erupted. My father, the king, rose to his feet, his face pale with alarm. "Alaric, that is madness. Suicidal. You are the heir. And I will not be an heir who hides behind his castle walls, while a curse of my own making threatens to consume us." The admission slipped out, a calculated risk. I saw the shock on their faces, the way Kalen's eyes narrowed in sudden understanding. I had given them a sliver of the truth to justify the insanity of my plan. "I require 2 companions only," I continued, pressing my advantage. "Captain Valerius, for his sword and his unwavering nerve." Valerius, standing guard by the door, straightened, a look of fierce pride on his face. "And Master Alaric, the arch-librarian." If the room was in an uproar before, it was pandemonium now. The ancient gnome, who was present to record the minutes, looked up from her notes, her spectacles nearly falling off her nose in shock. "Me, your highness? I am a scholar, a keeper of scrolls, not a clearer of swamps. The sunken temple is protected by ancient wards, not soldiers," I said, my gaze locking with hers. "I need your knowledge, Master Alaric, more than I need 100 swords who will be driven mad by the illusions of the fens before they took 100 steps. This is not a request." The journey into the Weeping Fens was a descent into a waking nightmare. The air grew thick and heavy, smelling of decay and damp earth, laced with a phantom scent of jasmine, a personal torment designed just for me. The eternal twilight of Arindril was suffocating here, filtered through a canopy of skeletal, weeping trees that seemed to grasp at us with their bare branches. The ground squelched beneath our boots, a mixture of mud and what looked unsettlingly like rotted memories. Morwenna knew we were here. The psychological assault was relentless. Valerius, ever the stoic soldier, was forced to walk past ghostly apparitions of his fallen men, their eyes accusing him of leaving them to die on forgotten battlefields. Master Alaric was plagued by the whispers of long-dead scholars, mocking her knowledge as insignificant, her life's work a dedication to dust. But the sorceress saved her cruelest artistry for me. The path ahead would shimmer, transforming into the silver meadow of my dreams. I would see Selene, free and smiling, beckoning me forward, only to have her dissolve into a swarm of black, biting flies. As I drew closer, her voice would drift on the wind, sometimes humming the melodies from our dreams, sometimes screaming in agony, making me flinch and falter. I saw my father on his deathbed, cursing my name. I saw my kingdom in flames, the people pointing at me, the prince whose foolish mercy had doomed them all. I gritted my teeth, clinging to the last words of the real Selene. She fears love that is an action. Every step was an action. Every illusion I ignored was an act of defiance. I became the anchor for my small, beleaguered team. When Valerius faltered, I reminded him of his oath. When Alara trembled, I spoke of the importance of her knowledge. I held us together with sheer, desperate will, my hope to shield against a deluge of despair. After what felt like an eternity of walking through our own personal hells, we found it. Half submerged in a black, stagnant marsh was a temple of obsidian stone, so ancient it seemed to have grown from the bog itself. The structure was covered in the same thorny vines that formed Selene's cage, pulsing with a faint, malevolent light. This was the sunken temple, the heart of Morwenna's power. The entrance was a massive stone archway, but it was sealed by a shimmering curtain of black and purple energy, a swirling vortex of sorrow. "A sorrow gate," Master Alara breathed, her voice trembling with a mixture of academic fascination and pure terror. "Powered by concentrated despair, forged from the very essence of loss. No physical weapon can breach it. It is impossible." "Nothing is impossible," I countered, stepping forward. "How do we open it?" Alara wrung her hands. "These gates are legend, Your Highness. The texts say they have only one vulnerability. They must be fed. To pass through a wall of despair, one must offer an equal or greater sacrifice. To open the gate, you must give it the most potent thing you possess." As I approached the shimmering barrier, it reacted to my presence. The swirling shadows within it coalesced, and a voice, soft and musical, echoed in my mind. It was Selene's voice, but twisted, made hollow and cruel. "I know what you carry, little prince," it whispered, the sound of caress and a threat. "I feel its warmth, a fragile, foolish little hope." I placed my hand against the gate. It was unnervingly warm, like feverish skin. "That is the price of entry," Selene's voice continued, wrapping around my soul like a venomous vine. "To enter my heart, you must first offer up your own. Give me your hope. Surrender the belief that you can save her. Embrace the despair you have been running from. Know that you will fail. Only then will the way be opened." My blood ran cold. The choice was the very definition of demonic cruelty. To save Selene, I had to abandon all hope of ever saving her. I had to step into the heart of my enemy's territory utterly broken, armed with nothing but the emptiness Morwenna had cursed me with in the first place. Chapter 6. The First Sunrise. The whisper of Selene's twisted voice echoed in the stagnant air of the fens, a promise of victory through utter defeat. "Give me your hope." Valerius's hand went to the hilt of his sword, his knuckles white. Alara simply stared, her face a parchment of horror. They saw an impossible choice. I saw the only path forward. Selene's true voice, from the Cavern of Souls, was my anchor. She fears love that is an action. This, then, was the final, most terrible action she required of me. "So be it," I whispered, the words a death sentence to the last flicker of warmth within me. I closed my eyes and did not picture Selene in a silver meadow, but in her thorny cage. I did not focus on her love, but on my failure. I let the crushing weight of my guilt, my foolish mercy, my kingdom's peril, wash over me. I embraced the certainty that I was too late, that my quest was a fool's errand, that I was leading my loyal companions to their deaths. I took the fragile, beautiful hope Selene had given me, and with a final, silent apology to her, I let it go. I felt it extinguish. It was a physical sensation, a pilot light in my soul being snuffed out, leaving behind a cold, profound emptiness. The prince who had been hollow before was now a vacuum. I opened my eyes. The fire in them was gone, replaced by the flat, dead calm of a frozen lake. I placed my hand on the sorrow gate. With a low, mournful hum, the shimmering curtain of despair dissolved, recognizing me as one of its own. The way was open. "Your Highness," Valerius said, his voice strained with alarm. "Alaric, what have you done?" "What was necessary?" I replied, my voice a monotone. I drew Nightbane and stepped through the archway, into the heart of the sunken temple. The interior was a chaotic masterpiece of nightmares. The architecture shifted, walls weeping black ooze, the whispers of the trapped souls a constant, agonizing chorus. Shadowy beasts, forged of regret and fear, lunged from the corridors. Valerius met them with grim steel, his battle cries a stark contrast to my chilling silence. Master Alara, clutching a glowing warding stone, chanted frantically, her ancient words providing a fragile shield against the worst of the temple's corrupting influence. The illusions that plagued me in the Fens returned with a vengeance, but now they found no purchase. Visions of a dying Selene, of my kingdom in ashes. They were just images. Without hope, there was no fear. Without love, there was no pain. I moved the phantoms with mechanical, relentless purpose, my eyes fixed on the path ahead, every step an echo in the vast, empty chamber of my heart. I was a sword, nothing more, aimed at the heart of the curse. We reached the central sanctum. It was a vast, circular chamber, and at its center, floating above a dais of black stone, was a pulsating, obsidian crystal the size of a man's chest. The Heartstone. It thrummed with a stolen, sickening life, drinking in the shadowy energy of the temple. And chained to the dais beneath it, by tendrils of pure shadow, was Selene. She was here, in the waking world, her form pale and translucent, her life being siphoned away to fuel the sorceress's power. I knew you would come, Morwenna said. She hovered near the ceiling, clad in her robes of shadow, a triumphant, cruel goddess in her own profane church. And I knew you would come broken. You see, Prince, your mercy was your undoing. That battlefield you spared was not just my home. It was a sacred ground of my ancestors. Your army's passage desecrated it, poisoning the magic in my bloodline. Your mercy was a slow, agonizing death sentence. This is merely justice. She gestured, and the shadows around her solidified into armored knights with weeping eyes for faces. He is an empty shell, Valerius. The real fight is with me, I said, my voice cold. As Valerius charged to meet the Shadow Guard, I walked toward the dais. Morwenna threw bolts of black energy at me, spells that should fill my mind with terror or my body with racking pain. They struck me and dissipated, finding no emotion to latch onto, no hope to curdle into fear. She stared, her triumphant smirk faltering into disbelief. How? She hissed. You should be a gibbering wreck. I did not answer. I raised Nightbane. This was the action, the final act of love, performed without the feeling of it. Stop, she screamed, a genuine panic in her voice now. You fool. If you destroy the Heartstone, you won't just free her. You will release every soul I have ever harvested. The sheer, chaotic force of 1,000 dreams unleashed at once will not just shatter this temple. It will shatter the fragile veil over Irindril. Your eternal night will become an eternal, waking nightmare for everyone. I hesitated. My blade was inches from the crystal, the fate of my kingdom, the lives of my people, all balanced against this one act. I looked at Selene. Her eyes were open, and in them I saw not despair, but fierce, profound love. She is right, my Alaric. Her voice filled my mind, clear and strong, a warmth that defied the emptiness within me. But she is also wrong. It will not be a nightmare. It will be an awakening. I looked at her, confused. My spirit is bound to Heartstone, she explained, a deep sorrow in her voice. To shatter it is to shatter me, but it is the only way. Free them, Alaric. Free them all. Let my end be their beginning. It is my choice. My final gift to you and to your kingdom. A single, hot tear traced a path down my cheek. The first thing I had felt since entering the temple. It was an agony of love, of loss, of a beauty too perfect for this cursed world. She was giving me her blessing to sacrifice her. I love you, Selene. I whispered, the words filling the hollow space inside me, not with hope, but with the pure, unwavering certainty of my devotion. As I spoke, Nightbane began to glow, not with the borrowed light of a dream, but with a brilliant, pure white light that came from within me. It was the light of a love that expected nothing in return, a love that was defined only by its sacrifice. No. Morwenna shrieked, lunging for me, but she was too late. With a final, heartbroken cry, I brought the glowing blade down upon the heartstone. It did not shatter into pieces. It imploded in a wave of blinding, silent white light. The thousand whispers of the cavern became a chorus of joyful release. The wave of energy erupted from the temple, consuming Morwenna in its cleansing fire, blasting Valerius's shadow opponents into dust. It shot upwards, tearing through the roof of the temple, through the canopy of the fens, and into the perpetually dark sky of Arindril. The wave of dream energy did not bring chaos. It brought color. Across the entire kingdom, the oppressive shroud of eternal night began to shred like old tapestry. Hues of impossible beauty, deep indigo, soft rose, brilliant gold, painted the clouds. And then, for the first time in 7 centuries, a sliver of the sun breached the horizon. Selene's chain form dissolved into 1,000 motes of pure light. They swirled around me, a final warm embrace, before rising to join the dawn. I felt her one last time, not as a voice, but as a feeling of profound peace settling within me. The curse was broken. The hollowness was gone, filled now not with an ache of emptiness, but with a beautiful, heartbreaking weight of her memory. I stood in the ruins of the sunken temple, Captain Valerius and Master Ilera watching me with silent, tear-filled awe. My kingdom was saved. I was whole, and I was utterly alone. I lifted my face, letting the first rays of a sunrise I had only ever read about in scrolls wash over me. It was more beautiful and more painful than I ever could have imagined. I was the dream-bound prince no more. I was Alaric, the sun-brought king, forever bound in memory of the woman who had taught a hollow man to love, and in doing so had brought back the light. And so, the sun rises on Arindril, but for Alaric, the world will never be as bright as it was in his dreams. A hero's victory, a kingdom's salvation, and a love story that will now only be told in whispers and ballads. Here at Shadowsong Stories, we believe the most powerful stories are forged in the fires of these impossible choices. The curses that bind us are often broken not by strength, but by sacrifice. Alaric chose his kingdom over his heart, a decision that saved everyone but himself. But what about you? What would you have done? Would you have shattered the Heartstone, knowing it meant losing the one you loved? Or would you have searched for another way, risking the entire world for a chance of happiness? Let me know your choice in the comments below. There is no right answer when the heart is on the line. If you felt the weight of Alaric's sacrifice and the chill of Morwenna's curse, then you found your home. Our journey through the shadows is just beginning.